Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the Railway. Today I'm looking at a brand new Thomas & Friends character by Bachmann. It's always really exciting when Bachmann releases a new character, and of course recently I've looked at quite a few of their N-scale characters, but it's been a really long while since I looked at one of their HO or 00 characters. They don't come out that often, so it's quite a big moment today. And of course today I am looking at Rebecca. And what an interesting choice Rebecca is for this range. I never thought we would see Bachmann do this. This has been talked about for a long time. People would ask me, do you think Bachmann will do a Rebecca? And I always said, oh, I'd love to see that. I love the Battle of Britain class. That's what Rebecca's based on in real life. But no, I don't think we'll ever see Bachmann do that. That's what I used to say. I never thought Rebecca would be popular enough for Bachmann to justify that. But they have done it, and here she is. So super interesting. Also, of course, Rebecca is a girl character, and back in the day with Bachmann's range and also the TV series as well, of course, most of the characters were boys. There were some girl rolling stock characters in Bachmann's range early on. Obviously, we had Annie and Clarabelle and Henrietta as well, but most of the engines were boys. I think the only girl early on, at least, was Emily. More recently though, they do seem to be introducing more girl characters. We had Rosie, of course, then we had Daisy, and now we've got Rebecca. And that's interesting as well. I mean, statistically, it is mostly boys and men who are interested in trains and model railways. But if characters like this can help girls and women to become more interested in model railways, then I'm all for that. And of course, boys can enjoy this as well. It's not as though only boys can enjoy boy engines and only girls girl engines, but still, it's nice to see a bit more balance. Also, this is, I think, one of the biggest, and feeling the packaging here, heaviest engines that Bachmann have ever introduced to this range. I mean, look at Rebecca. She is absolutely massive, which of course makes her very expensive. Bachmann's full RRP for this is $299. Again, that seems crazy to me. Rebecca is a relative newcomer to the series. I think she was only in it from series 22 to 24, so she's certainly not in the era that I watched. Did Rebecca become super popular during that time to the point where lots of people are going to be willing to spend hundreds of dollars on a model of her? I don't know, obviously Bachmann thinks so. Still, a really interesting choice to see this. Now, because I'm in the UK, I couldn't buy this from a US retailer. Well, I could have done, but it would have cost me a lot on postage. So I bought mine from Tootley Thomas at a pretty good price, £189, especially compared to the $299. But that's still an insane amount of money, isn't it, for something like this? Many times I've paid less than that for sort of serious premium models and not Thomas characters. So I'm super curious to see what Rebecca is like. Is she going to be better quality than the older and cheaper characters? Are there going to be improvements to the mechanism? Is she going to be more detailed than ever before? Well, it kind of looks like it, doesn't it? But really, is she up close? Today we're going to find out. So hopefully we'll enjoy this. Rebecca, new Thomas & Friends character by Bachmann. Is this something you want to pick up for your youngsters? Well, let's see. Alright, so I believe this is the first $300 Thomas character that I've looked at. And she's still in disposable packaging. Why? Why are we still using this kind of packaging when these cost what they do? Some sort of box to protect this from getting faded by the sun is really needed now, I think. Although it does look as though there is some sort of clamshell packaging inside here, which you could reuse, so that's good. I am going to show you how you can open this though, so that you can reuse this packaging. We'll get to that in just a second. Anyway, let me show you the back of the pack. So yeah, here's some of the other characters you can collect. Only some of them, there's even more over here on this list. Collect them all, it says. Embarrassingly, I think I mostly have. Yeah, that's a lot of money. But anyway, let me show you how to get into this then. Now, you're not going to want to let your youngsters do this, obviously do this for them. I've got a sharp knife here, which is a horrible thing to be using in conjunction with a sort of toy, if you will. Not that this is a toy at that sort of price. But yeah, if you carefully cut around the bottom of the packaging, should be cutting away from myself really, then you should be able to get into this in such a way that you can reuse it to keep the engine safe. So let's see if I got into this. although it seems to be splitting. Okay, no, I did it. Right, and let's pull out Rebecca and the instructions. Hopefully there is some, yeah. And yeah, seriously, she seems incredibly weighty. I don't know if she's mostly made of metal or something this time, but yeah, this is a heavy character. I would not be surprised if this is the heaviest one out of all of them. Heavier than Gordon by the feels of it. Anyway, one moment, Rebecca. We'll get to you in just a second. First of all, oh, a full colour combined Bachmann and Williams catalogue, over 300 pages, digest size. Oh my goodness, is he going to eat it? No, I'm not going to eat it. But what I am going to do is fold it up very small and insert it into one of my slippers so that over the next 6 months, this will fester and develop a more pleasant flavour so that I will thoroughly enjoy this when I do decide to consume it. Tune back into the channel in 6 months to see me give that a try. Right, then we've got these instructions. So we'll start with the boring bit, arguably, and that's the tender. Seems like quite a simple tender, actually. You can see the parts there. A few separate details, though, which is nice to see. And then on the other side, we have Rebecca herself. Goodness, so this reveals a fair bit about the mechanism. There's the motor. Looks like a standard Bachmann motor. It does look as though maybe it's got a flywheel, though, which is good. And of course, because this is a 00 or HO model, this does have the moving eye mechanism. So we'll see how well that works and such later on. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it. Do we actually have any instructions for this, or is it just the exploded diagram? Yeah, that's guarantee. Great. So no instructions for the $300 locomotive. It is just an exploded diagram. Okay. Well, rather you than me, Bachmann. Goodness me. Right. This looks really cool, though. I mean, this is quite the paint job. Good old Rebecca. Right, let's open this up. And yeah, this is a clamshell style packaging. So you could reuse this, of course. Right, are they connected? No, let's go with the tender first then. Wow, this is actually a super cool tender. So it's really heavy. There's a fair bit of weight to it. The body is made of plastic, but it's very, very shiny and very heavy, like I say, so there must be a fair block of metal inside this. Very colourful, of course, and it's got the NWR, which is the Northwestern Railway. That's the main railway on Sodor, of course, although not many engines actually have that branding on them, which is interesting. Yeah, that is a great tender, and more on that in just a second. Can't believe how heavy it is. Why does it weigh so much? Guess it'll be stable. Right, and then Rebecca. Goodness gracious. Yeah, I know it's probably rude to say this about a lady, but she really is heavy. Goodness gracious. I'll get this on the scales and compare this with the other characters, but yeah, I can almost guarantee that she is the heaviest of the bunch. Absolutely amazing. And yeah, again, very, very colourful. Number 22, of course. Quite a complex model, really, and I'm going to call this a model rather than a toy because, of course, at these sorts of prices, they're really not toys anymore. And unless you're very, very lucky, pocket money is not going to cut it for something like this. So yeah, a model she is. And if I hold the tender with her and hook that on, you can see what the full effect is like. Yeah, I mean, it's impressive. I don't think it's 185 pounds impressive, certainly not, but it's certainly one of the better looking models at first glance that I've ever seen in this range. Yeah, she really is quite the beast, and I mean that in the most positive possible way. Alright, so we'll take a much closer look at the detail and the model and all the sort of features that she's got in just a second, but for now let's have a bit of background on the real Rebecca. Like I've been saying, Rebecca is one of the newer characters in the Thomas & Friends universe, and she appeared for the first time in 2018's episode Confusion Without Delay. She is based on the Southern Railway's West Country class and Battle of Britain class, which dates back to 1945, when they were introduced to the design of Oliver Bulleid. And Rebecca gets her unique shape from the air-smoothed casing that the real engines had. They looked like this so that they could be put through a coach wash, washed just like a passenger carriage, instead of being washed manually, which would take a really long time. So it saved money in real life. Anyway, Rebecca is a shy character, but she's not so shy that she won't stand up to the bossy older engines like Gordon, which makes her pretty useful. And she's generally a very cheerful engine who likes to see the best in others, and she's also known for her honesty. Right, let's find out just how beefy Rebecca is then. So we'll start with Gordon, just for comparison. So Gordon weighs 342 grams. Now he does, but I added quite a bit of weight to Gordon's tender. So if I substitute in Henry's tender, we get a more accurate reading, which is 309 grams. Okay, now, first question, can Rebecca beat 309 grams with just her loco and not her tender? Let's see. Yes, so without the tender, she's massively heavier by, you know, a lot of grams, 373 grams. With the tender, wow, 460 grams. So massively heavier than the other characters. Like I say, Gordon's one of the bigger ones. She's way heavier than Gordon, so weight is a massive tick. You get a very heavy engine here in Rebecca then, and assuming the mechanism's good, that should make her a very powerful engine too, which is really, really interesting. We'll see how much she can haul later on. Detail-wise, this is a really impressive engine. I think it is the most detailed and complicated of Bachmann's models so far. I do think they could have gone further with it, given the price, but yeah, on the whole, this is a really, really cool model. So first of all, let's talk about the paintwork. The finish is excellent. It matches the rest of the range. Very glossy, high shine to it, pretty much as you'd expect, but there's a lot of colours involved here. We've got the red, the orange, the yellow, the sort of white band, and then the blue, of course, very, very precisely applied. And we've got a lot of detail picked out here. We've got the window frames, which have been painted blue, lots of different details across the roof picked out. The wheels are painted yellow, as you can see, and those have even been lined. Then we've got the number on the side of the cab. Rebecca's number is 22, and we've also got her little printed nameplate here, which again is really nicely painted. So from a decoration point of view, this has to be one of the most complicated Bachmann Thomas models I've ever seen, probably the most complicated. Detail-wise, it is a bit of a mixed bag. There are some details on here which are really awesome to see. So we've got separately fitted brake rigging. Looks a little bit chunky, but it is here and separately fitted. I don't think I've ever seen that before in this range. We've also got quite detailed motion. I mean, these coupling rods are much, much finer than we've seen on other characters. I mean, Gordon's rods are quite chunky. Rebecca's much more realistic. We've got a bit of a scratch on the connecting rod there, but yeah, they are metal and they do look pretty good on the whole. So nice motion. The bullied wheels, these are quite nicely done. These are the Firth Brown wheels, I think we call them. They're obviously a much simplified version of that wheel, but they give the impression of them for sure. An interesting thing about Rebecca though is that her bogie wheels and the tender wheels as well, of course, and the pony wheels, they don't have this design like the real engines did. These are just sort of disc wheels with single holes in them. Obviously that's not a criticism of the model. The real character on TV really did look like that. It's just interesting. I don't know why that is. Yeah, unusual. Then around the front there is quite a lot to see here. One disappointment is obviously Rebecca has lamps, but none of these work. I think for $299 as a full price, some working lights would have been really fun. That would have added a lot to the model. So a little bit disappointing just to see these as moulded blobs which have been painted over. Yeah, that's a little bit naff for the money, I think. Rebecca's face though is really, really well done. I've talked recently about how the moving eye mechanisms can make the faces look less realistic, but I really don't think that's the case here. The eyes fit the face really well. There's no gaps behind the eyes and things like that that would make it look creepy. It's actually a really good fit, so I would say the face here looks great. But then we've got details like these handrails which are just moulded on, same with the pipework and such. And I do understand that. Obviously this model is intended for youngsters. If it's got lots of fragile separate parts, there is the risk that those could get broken off. But then I think this is a $300 model at the full price. Should it really cost this much money if it is as simple as this? And I suppose the broader question is, are people really going to be giving models like this to kids who might sort of bash them around and damage them? Yeah, I'm not really convinced. If this was $100, then yes, I think it would be different. But thinking about it for me, would I buy a model like this for a child of mine? Well, obviously I'd like to. I'd like for them to have the best, but realistically, I know that I could spend £185 on a lot more than just this that would bring a lot of entertainment to a child of mine. And let's say I did spend £185 on one toy for my kid, would I be giving it to them to smash around and potentially break off handrails like this? No, I don't think so. I would use this as a lesson in taking care of special, valuable things. It would be an occasion to get this out. We would do it with supervision. We would be very, very careful with it. So yeah, for $300 full price, I'm not really convinced that details like this should just be moulded on. If they were separately fitted, that would make the model more worth the money, more accurate, and honestly, more what you'd expect, given that these are more models now and less toys. And we do have some small parts. I mean, the buffers are relatively small. These are nicely done. We've got a coupling hook for the buffer beam, as you can see, and we've got a separately fitted pipe on the front here as well. Yeah, an interesting front end. It looks quite different from the real Battle of Britain, as does the cab as well. Yeah, it's a different cab shape, I think, as well. But still really cool to see a Battle of Britain class in model form made by Bachmann. I don't think that's ever happened before. Unusual. Anyway, let's get on to some more of the details. The moulding detail is really interesting. The rivets are massive bulbous things. They look like pustules. Obviously, again, that's not a criticism of Bachmann. The character from the show does look like that. It's just interesting, isn't it, that the rivets are so massive. And then up on the top, we've got the chimney, not dreadfully realistic. You can see that doesn't go anywhere. But what is very, very realistic is the whistle and safety valves. I thought these were metal when I first saw them. The quality of the paint is that good. I don't think they are. I think they're plastic, but like I say, they've been painted very, very realistically, which looks great. And then around the cab, we've got glazing. Not all of the Thomas characters from Bachmann do have glazed windows, but this one does. But that's pretty much where the cab detail ends. We do have a realistic cab space, so if you wanted to, say, 3D print some figures or buy some figures, whatever, you could put those into the cab. That would be fun, but there is no detail of any kind inside here, no controls or anything like that, just a blank space. Something I like even more about this is the tender. Again, this has to be the most complicated tender I've seen in this range. Yes, in terms of the decoration, which has been done really well. I mean, how many colours are on this? Loads. Lovely NWR lettering on the side, as you can see, very nicely presented wheels with quite a bit of detail around the underframe as well, including these ladders, which are also separately painted. Although there are still a few visible scuffs here and there in the bodywork, which just seems a little bit naff. You know, this is a really simple model, yet it costs so much. Could they really not have found a way to assemble these without the scuffs? It's just a tad insulting, really, isn't it? The prices, at least. Then we've got the co-load, which I think looks really good. Yeah, you've got this big, chunky looking model with not that much detail, and then a very detailed co-load. That's unusual, isn't it? Then we've got these parts behind the co-load, which have the sort of straps picked out in the silver. That looks fantastic. And then we've got the very large ladder around the back, which is a separate part. Again, you would have thought that would be quite fragile, but it's not really. It's quite sturdy. And between the rungs of the ladder, you can see we've got a little lamp. Again, though, that doesn't work. And another similarly detailed buffer beam with your typical tension lock coupling. These are not NEM, though, or anything like that. They're just the standard Bachmann type. And there is a coupling on the front end as well, attached to the front bogie, so you can couple rolling stock to Rebecca from either end. That's not true of all of the 00 characters, so it's worth noting that, I think. Interesting thing about the tender, this was the sort of tender that the Battle of Britain class would have after being rebuilt. Back when they had the air smoothed casing like this, their tenders were a little different from this. But with Rebecca, we've got the new tender with the old body, which is very interesting. So yeah, a fascinating engine to look at. Certainly very complex, certainly more detailed than previous Bachmann models in this range, but not to the point where it's worth $300 or £185 at the price I paid from Tootly Thomas. But a very good job, I think, overall. They've really captured the character very nicely, and I do like that face. It looks fantastic. But how does Rebecca run? Obviously, she's incredibly heavy. If this has got the same mechanism that the likes of Gordon has got, then I don't think I'm going to be best pleased. A heavy loco like this and an expensive loco like this calls for a high quality mechanism that's going to last a long time and that's going to be capable of moving such a large and heavy loco such as Rebecca. So let's get her down onto the track and let's see what she's like. So there she is, Rebecca, down onto the track, looking absolutely brilliant. And I have filmed the initial performance test, and I'll show you how that went in just a second. After that though, I disassembled Rebecca, I took a look at her mechanism, and that's what I want to talk about now. I'm not very impressed. Yeah, I'm actually quite shocked at how poor the mechanism here is. It strikes me that this has been designed to be as cheap as it possibly can be and then sold at the highest possible price they can get away with. And I think, given who the target demographic is for this model, that is more than a little morally questionable, isn't it? And I realise that is quite a thing to say, so let's jump into this and let me explain exactly why I think that. So first of all, here's the drawbar between loco and tender. It's just a plastic drawbar, there's no wires here. That tells us there's no electrical connection to the tender whatsoever. So we've got no tender pickups. Again, how many £189 locos do I review that don't have tender pickups these days? Really surprised by that. So all we've got still on this brand new release is loco driving wheel pickups. So that means of the model's 18 wheels that it's got in total, only 6 of them pick up. That is a third. It's not very good really, is it? Anyway, the base keeper plate on the loco is held on with screws, but you can't remove this entirely because it's hardwired in place. Again, with a model of this price, I'd expect pogo pins to make servicing a little bit easier, so that you can remove the base keeper entirely to get good access to the axles and pickups for cleaning. As you can see, we've got no bearings fitted to the driving axles. Again, why Bachmann are charging this and not fitting the bearings, I just couldn't tell you. I have no idea. Some of this range do have bearings, so they've gone backwards with Rebecca, and there's also bearings, of course, on even the N-scale range, but again, not on Rebecca. And you can see if I pull one of the axles out, they sit into square slots cut into the metal chassis. Seems very, very poor quality. Anyway, we've got the centre axle driven, that's fairly standard, so the motion's translated with the rods. And then for removing the body, this is done with 4 screws, 2 towards the back, 2 towards the front. And here is the heavy metal chassis, and this is where all of the weight comes from. Yeah, really big and chunky this. Right, so the motor's covered up with copper tape, which is a strange one. So I piggled that off very gently. I don't know why that was there. Possibly, though, it was there to hide the fact that this loco is just running a 3-pole motor. Yep, not even a 5-pole motor, not a nice modern coreless motor, a 3-pole motor. Very similar to the ones that have been used in these models for decades. Now, I have to say, the way this motor performs is really good. It's not a great crawler, as we're going to see, and that's because it's a 3-pole motor. I have had reliability issues with motors similar to this in the past, but I have to say, so far, with Rebecca at least, I've not had any issues with that. And I think there is a flywheel on this motor as well, although it's hidden inside this chassis, so I can't see it. No DCC socket on board. Again, what year is this? 2005 or 2025? No DCC socket, so if you want to chip this, you've got to take a soldering iron to it. Very poor on features, and as I say, no speaker pre-fitted, no lighting, nothing like that. Very, very basic. Here's the eye mechanism, just out of interest. So we've got this gear which slowly rotates, and there's a curved groove or track carved into this gear, and this bracket follows the curve of that groove and guides the eyes left and right, and I'll show you how that works in just a second. Then we've got the gauging back to back. This came in at 14.4 quite reliably, so nothing wrong with that. So yeah, a really poor quality mechanism, and I find that super disappointing. I realise that this is effectively a toy, and so I suppose it shouldn't be that surprising that it's got a toy grade mechanism, but then why are we pretending that this is a $299 locomotive? You know, Bachmann know that there are going to be children out there who are going to ask for this for their birthday or for Christmas, or who are going to save up for an awfully long time to buy this. I think to know that and then to put such a cheap and poor quality mechanism in a model like this is just not very nice at all. It just doesn't sit well with me in the slightest. So yeah, that's the mechanism, not very good at all, but I have to say right out of the box, the performance was quite pleasing. So let me jump back in time and I'll show you how that went. Alright, moment of truth then. Really curious to see how Rebecca runs. Obviously she weighs a ton. Is she still going to be a good runner, as you'd expect for a $299 RRP locomotive in 2025? Let's see, does she work at all? Here goes, forwards direction. Yes, with a lot of noise, yes, she does. And reverse. quite smoothly, I must say. Let's go by at 50% speed. Let's have a look at half power. Much noisier in forwards. Yeah, reasonably steady runner, I would say, not dreadfully quick. Let's have a look and see what the full speed is like. Here we go. Oh, yeah. So she can go for it. She certainly can. I would say the range of speeds is pretty fair. Let's have a look at the eye mechanism. And yeah, that seems to work pretty much as the other Bachmann eye mechanisms do. So just sort of scanning left and right as she runs. Obviously, the faster you run her, the faster the eyes will move. Yeah, it seems like the standard Bachmann eye mechanism. Right, so obviously at this point I haven't run Rebecca in, and I am going to let her have 30 minutes in either direction before I give her a rating on performance. But straight out of the box, let's do a bit more thorough testing. Let's see what the crawl is like to start with. So let's back her up. Can Rebecca crawl? Here we go. Turning up. You know what? Immediately she can. That's pretty good. It's a little bit coggy. It's not a smooth motion at all, which makes me wonder whether or not this has got a 3 or a 5 pole motor. You will know the answer to that probably, if I could get access to it. Maybe I can't, I don't know. But yeah, that's pretty good, I would say, especially considering there is an eye mechanism which is using up some of the energy from the motor as well, so that's good. Big question then, this is a heavy loco. Is there any torque to this mechanism? Is the motor powerful enough to run such a heavy engine? So I'll put my fingers in front of the buffers and turn up to 50%. Can she still spin her wheels? Yes. It's laboured. It's very, very laboured, but she can do. Let's try that again. Yes. So struggling quite a bit, but I suppose that is what you'd expect for such a heavy loco, so I would say that's not too bad. How she'll handle the curves with a load, we shall see. But yeah, it's not bad. I've seen worse torque than that. Okay, with that then, let's run Rebecca in. Let's get her going at half power and see how she gets on around the track. Will she be smooth and consistent? Let's have a look. Okay, here we go, broadest curves. She does seem very, very happy as she runs. Second radius. Ooh, nice. Not really any slowing down that I noticed. So I would say, although the crawl could be a tiny bit better maybe, the performance here is actually really, really good. Better than I've seen on previous Bachmann Thomas and Friends locos in 00 for sure. So I think this is quite promising. Yeah, she seems very, very happy, nice and smooth. Good speed, very constant. This is turning into a really good runner, I think. So yeah, nice work from Bachmann. I'll let this run in fully then, forwards for 30 minutes, backwards for 30 minutes. Then we'll come back, I'll try coupling up to some coaches with Rebecca, see how she gets on with a load. And of course I'll get some of the other Thomas engines out and we'll do a bit of a running session. Alright, I'll be back in just a sec. Alright, we are back folks, and yeah, the performance really is good. The mechanism sucks, it's quite a terrible mechanism, but at least the performance is good. Now, there's a few sort of caveats with that. Obviously, because of how poor the quality of the mechanism is, you are going to have to take good care of this mechanism. I would recommend disassembling it once in a while, at least, just to clean and re-lubricate those bearings, because there is going to be a lot of friction there with the square slots. You are going to have to clean the pickups once in a while, because so few wheels pick up. So, yeah, it's going to take some work to keep this loco running as well as this over a matter of years or so. But as a brand new model at the moment, the performance is absolutely excellent. I would not complain about this at all. Yeah, it's nice and smooth, nice and constant. I know I keep saying it, I should say she. Yeah, don't have an issue with this at all. And like I say, the eye mechanism doesn't seem to detract too much from this. The torque isn't bad, and the sort of face hasn't been compromised too much by it, if at all. So actually I think the eye mechanism is just a nice addition. It doesn't seem to take away anything from the model, which is nice. Anyway, let's have a look and see how the performance has changed now that this is fully running. Let's go past at 50% speed. There we go. Yeah, it's quite slow really. Yeah, it's not a speedy loco, although she is at the full speed, obviously. But yeah, generally I would say well geared, and that could be why the torque isn't worse than it is. The slower gearing is absolutely essential to make sure that this can actually work and move itself. So let's have a look, 50%. Yeah, as you can see, there is some power there, which is good. She slows down, but she doesn't stop, which means the motor isn't going to be stalling. It means it's not too unhealthy for the motor. So yeah, that's good. The crawl was pretty good before for a 3-pole motor, but I think I've seen better. Is that still true now that this is running? Let's see. Yeah, she's moving. Yeah, that's pretty good actually. Is it still moving? No, it needs a bit more. Yeah, so it's not a dreadfully smooth motion. You can see as the motor sort of jumps between the coils that it's not a smooth motion, but for a 3-pole motor, this is remarkably slow. So I would say on the whole, the performance is excellent, and we can do quite a smooth acceleration. So yeah, I mean, we've seen better crawlers on premium models, and maybe this should have been better for what it cost me, but on the whole, I'm not really going to complain about the performance. I think this is really good. The pulling power is excellent as well. Again, it's going to be, isn't it? So I got 0.7 newtons, which should be about 40 coaches on straight and level track. Now, looking at what Rebecca hauled in the show, is she ever going to get close to 40 coaches realistically? No, I don't think so. So that's more than adequate. More than adequate, very, very powerful. I would say the most powerful of the Thomas & Friends models, at least the Bachmann ones. Maybe some of the Hornby ones would be more powerful because they had cheating rubber traction tyres in their tenders. But Rebecca obviously doesn't. She's got all metal wheels and she's as powerful as she is, all thanks to her weight. So the weight is one good thing that Bachmann did not cheap out on, which is good. Anyway, I've set up quite a big rake of Southern coaches, so there's 7 of them here, and this is the kind of coaches that we would see the West Country class or Battle of Britain hauling in real life, so I thought that would be interesting to do. Anyway, let's back up, let's see how the couplings work. Here we go. Try and do this steadily. Right, can I be precise? You know, I should be able to be quite precise here, so let's do a real slow coupling. I realise youngsters probably won't be doing this, but I like to, so I will. Well, I heard a click. Has she got them? Yeah, she's got them. Right, 7 coaches then. That seems like quite a lot for a Thomas & Friends model. Can she manage them? In theory, yes, but let's see. Right, forwards, here we go. Let's do this slowly and accelerate. And she seems to be moving them quite easily. Yeah, as much as I'm surprised at the poor quality mechanism, I'm equally pleasantly surprised by how weighty this model is. Wasn't expecting that. So on the other lines, I've decided to run some of the other girl characters from Thomas. So on the middle line, I've got Rosie in the pink, not the red. I would run Emily, but unfortunately she failed some years ago. So I am speaking from experience when I say the mechanisms here aren't very good. Yeah, my Emily failed, had to take the motor out. Now she's just a freewheeling engine. So she's not running to date, but Rosie's okay. I think Rosie does have the bearings actually. I think I'm right in saying that. And then we have Daisy on the inside line, who is, I suppose, one of the other newest girl characters, at least engines. And she's a DMU, a single car DMU, so she's not hauling anything. So with that, let's get her going, see which other characters you can spot on the line, and let's catch up with Rebecca, see how she's getting on with those Southern coaches. Okay, here she comes then. Quite a load here. Is she going to slow down? Well, not on the 4th radius. Tighter curves. Wow. So, you know, I have to be fair, as much as I think this loco is a complete rip-off in every way, the performance itself is really, really good. So if you want an enjoyable runner, Rebecca is excellent. She really, really is good. I'm not going to say too much bad about the performance here. She's powerful, she's smooth, and she seems to be well geared. I don't know that this has been geared differently to the other characters, but she does seem to go nice and slowly, and that slowness doesn't seem to be because she's underpowered. It seems to be that she's geared that way
so that she is quite powerful, and I think that's smart, and she certainly is. Good torque, good weight, that creates a nice and powerful model, which this certainly is. So it's a mixed bag. I can't believe how expensive this is. At Train World, it is a little cheaper. I think $185 is the price at Train World, so do shop around. Definitely don't pay that RRP of $299. Obviously, I've had to pay more than that because I could have got this for $185 at Train World, but then there would have been many dollars of shipping and import charges on top of that. So for me in the UK, £189 was the best I could have done from Tuttley Thomas. If you're in the States, definitely consider Train World or another place that has a similarly good price. But even so, $185, yikes. It's a lot of money for something that really is very basic and doesn't have a great mechanism. You know, that doesn't sit too well with me. I really thought Bachmann were going to try and do better with these models, especially looking at their N-scale models. You know, that shows me that they know how to create a good quality mechanism. And the way those models run, I mean, they crawl better than Rebecca does. So I think for me, that really just proves what a good quality mechanism can do. So some disappointments, but also a lot about Rebecca is great. I think she looks wonderful. The face, the paint job, all of that is really good. So it's by no means a terrible model, but for the price that I would have expected, quite a bit better.
Let's have some ratings then for the brand new Bachmann Rebecca. And as you can see, this is a bit of a mixed bag. Overall, not that impressed with this. The level of detail though, I thought was really good. Generally, I really like the way this loco looks. Paintwork is brilliant. She's a very, very complex loco when it comes to her paint job. I think that's been done so well. Also, I think the face is brilliant. Looking at photos from the show, I think Bachmann have got the face pretty well spot on. As they have with the shape of the engine, the accuracy of the way she looks, I think they've really nailed that. On the downside though, there's quite a bit of moulded detail on this model, the handrails, the pipework, all very obvious that it's just sort of moulded in and then just painted. I understand why they've done that, but like I say, this model cost a lot. It does call that massively high price tag into question when the model is obviously very simple. It's also got no working lamps. The model does have lamps, but they don't work or anything. Again, normally when I pay this much for a model, it will have some sort of working lighting if applicable. I consider this loco applicable, so that's a shame. No cab interior either. Again, you don't really need loads of cab detail, but for the price, I really would expect it. Performance though is actually fairly good. It's not a brilliant crawler, it is quite coggy, I think because of the 3-pole motor, but otherwise it's excellent. There does seem to be decent torque. She's nice and smooth, she's got a great range of speeds. At the moment, while she's brand new, the pickups are adequate so that she's not cutting out on points and such, although she will need her wheels and pickups cleaning eventually, otherwise she's going to start stuttering and cutting out on points and such. Otherwise, apart from the crawl, the performance is really good, so I've given it 4-star. Next, the pulling power is immense, 40 coaches or 0.7 newtons, absolutely amazing, and we saw how much Rebecca weighed earlier on in the video. Very heavy, so great in terms of pulling power. The mechanism though is a massive letdown. I really couldn't find anything good to say really about the mechanism. So, not that serviceable. The base keeper is hardwired, which will make it harder to clean the axles and pickups and such. You can do it, but it's not as easy as it would be with pogo pins. No proper bearings on the driving axles, square slots for the axles to sit in, no tender pickups, a 3-pole motor, no DCC socket, no lights, no speakers, nothing like that. It's just so incredibly bare bones, which is fine for a cheap toy, but not fine at all at such a high price. Quite shameful, I think, the mechanism in this loco. Quite a surprise that, and not a pleasant one. The quality on the whole though is pretty good. I've given it 4-star. Now, yes, it does have the plastic body, but the weight is certainly not an issue. There's a very heavy chassis inside here, so that despite the plastic body, I'm not going to fault that. Otherwise, excellent assembly. All the details, the ones that are there, have been fitted nicely and the paintwork is excellent. It just doesn't get 5-star because there were some scuffs. The connecting rods didn't look the best because of the marks, and there were some marks on the tender body as well. Again, if you're paying this much, you do expect perfection. I didn't quite get it, so it loses a star for that. Value for money then. So, the RRP of $299, it seems obvious to me that is ridiculous. Yes, there is a licensing fee involved. Bachmann will have to pay Gullane, the Thomas people, to use these characters, and that's true, but that accounts for a small percentage of the wholesale price. For me, that doesn't adequately explain why this model is about twice as expensive as it ought to be. So yes, I think the licensing fee will have something to do with the high price, but I don't think it can just be that. I paid £189 for this from Tootly Thomas. Well, when I think about the latest Acura scale locomotives that are so detailed with speakers and lights and sprung buffers and everything that they've got, and they cost £169.99, I think, why is this incredibly basic model with almost no detail, one of the poorest mechanisms I've seen, even more expensive than those models? It's insane, especially when children are involved. I just think, come on Bachmann, get real here. So yeah, 1.5 star on value. I really can't see what about this model would in any way justify such a price. It's such a pity. So overall then, that is 6.01 out of 10, which sadly is a fail. I think if this had a better mechanism and a more realistic price, I could be much more positive about this thing. Otherwise, the way she looks is great, the way she runs is okay, but I think you're going to have to really spend time taking care of the mechanism here if you want it to stay that way. So into the logbook we go, and she's 7th place, not bottom then, above the KR Models Bullied Leader. Well, it's not going to be worse than that, is it? And below the Hornby A3. Well, if you're a massive Rebecca fan, then I suppose I could recommend this because it does look great. Otherwise, if you're looking to buy this for a child and you want it to last years and years, I would say honestly it's not worth the money. Plus, would I let a child of mine save up for months and years on end in order to buy this thing, knowing what it's like? No, I don't think I would. I really don't. I think there are better value models that a child could enjoy a lot more than this, and I wouldn't want to see them blow £189 on something unless it was a quality item that was built really well and intended to last. I don't think that's what this is.
Alright then folks, well that will just about do it for my review of Bachmann's brand new Rebecca. Now, as much as I have just failed it on the rating, yeah, sorry about that, I have to say I've enjoyed this model. You know, I love the real bullied light Pacifics, I love the West Country class and the Battle of Britain. It's one of my absolute favourite classes, actually. So to see one of those as a Thomas and Friends character and being able to own it, that is awesome, and I've really enjoyed that aspect of this. And like I say, the way Bachmann have produced this, the way it looks, and the way they've painted it, that is also fantastic. I mean, they've always been great for making the characters look just like they do in the show, and I think Rebecca really does, in fact, possibly even more so than ever before. So they've really gone to town with the way she looks, I think. And I want to emphasise that because I feel like I've emphasised how poor the mechanism is. So yeah, they've done some things well, they've done other things not so well. It's a mixed bag. Obviously, if you're going to look at getting one of these, consider all of the pros and cons, consider what else you can get for that money, make up your own mind. I think that's always best. And if you want to take my advice, then feel free to. That's why it's there. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please do comment down below. Let me know what you think about this model. Do you think it could have been better for the money? Do you think it's absolutely fine? Either way, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, so please do share those with me down in the comments. Anyway, for now, thank you once again for watching, and I'll catch you again for another review very, very soon. Alright, cheers everybody. You take care.